writing your personal statement can be a really confusing time in your application because it seems really simple at first, but trust me, when you start, you soon realize it's more tricky than you first expected. So I'm going to share with you today my personal statement from 2022 that got me accepted into multiple AA programs, and I'm going to teach you a few things about what I learned in my writing experience that hopefully you can benefit from. So your application is a story of who you are as a student, who you are as a healthcare professional, and why you're well suited for acceptance into the program. And that's really the story you want to be retelling in your personal statement. You want to tie together all of the little elements that you've included in your application and build it into a narrative that explains, a little bit about who you are as a person, your motivations, and why you're well qualified. So this is a time where you want to be, bragging about yourself a little bit, but also, somewhat humbly acknowledging where you've come from, acknowledging that this is the start of the journey that you want to go on. So here's the prompt. Please explain your motivation for selecting a career in healthcare, and specifically why you're interested in becoming an anesthesiologist assistant. Describe how your personal and professional background will help you achieve your career goals and eminently suit you to this profession. So when you're writing your personal statement, it's very important to sort of narrow it down because it's very easy to go over your word limit. It's very easy to get caught up in the weeds. But you really just want to keep it simple and don't reinvent the wheel. So that's your prompt right there. And that's really what you want to stick to. You can really break it down into a 3-act structure. 1, why are you interested in healthcare? Why are you interested in becoming an anesthesiologist assistant specifically? And then I would say, what have you done to follow up on those initial interests? So the first one is, why are you interested in healthcare? So tell the story of your first interest in healthcare, and then why you're interested in anesthesia. And then for me, the third one is, what have you done in terms of getting experience or learning more about the profession, or any other factors that you've gone to follow up with your initial interests that have affirmed or demonstrate your ability or your readiness for the profession. And I just wanted to say before we get into this that this is how I wrote mine, and this is from 2 years ago. It's definitely not perfect, but it's authentic. So here we go. When I was a teenager, I suffered an injury which damaged a tendon in my hand, which caused a loss in both mobility and sensation. I remember the night I spent in the hospital before my first surgery. The world seemed to close in on me as fear and doubts crept in. The next morning, I met my surgeon and the anesthesiologist, who through their empathy and calm confidence were able to assuage my fears. I was able to fully place my trust in them, and in turn, they provided me with excellent care. After that surgery, I went on to make a full recovery. I remain grateful for those who provided care and supported me on one of my most challenging days. Just as they were able to profoundly help me at one of my lowest points, I was then inspired to pursue a future caring for others in healthcare. So that's, Act 1. Why are you interested in healthcare? For me, it was my experience cutting my hand when I was a kid and having my tendons repaired. That was my firsthand experience being exposed to medicine and the powers of surgery, and just how serious and capable these surgeons and anesthesiologists are. So that's why I was first interested, and we'll keep going. This next little part of the personal statement is my follow-up and how I'd further develop that initial interest. So during my undergraduate studies, I began volunteering at my local hospital and later their COVID-19 vaccine clinic. I took this time to research different potential careers. This is when I discovered the anesthesiologist assistant profession. I was drawn to the focused education path and the blend between pharmacology and performing precise procedures. I knew that I needed to get more hands-on experience, so I began working at a hospital's emergency department as a patient transporter. So that, I think, is an important paragraph to have. It shows that it wasn't an accident, and it rationalizes my thought process from, oh, I'm interested, and then here I am taking it more seriously, putting some skin in the game, and showing and explaining the actions I've taken to further myself down this path. And then we go into some stories. I vividly remember my first day. I was training with a technician when one of our COVID patients began to crash and then code. I watched the whole team come together in what felt like mere seconds. The tension was high and the stakes were clear, but everyone knew their role and completed it well. After an emergent intubation by the emergency department physician, chest compressions from the nurses and technicians, and multiple rounds of epinephrine, the patients survived the code, and we transported them to the intensive care unit. This experience further reinforced my desire to become part of a team like that, who are able to come together to provide the best care while under stress. And while I'm naturally drawn to the high intensity of a trauma or a critical case, I'm also grateful for all the simple human connections I was able to make with patients and their families. Every patient in the hospital was at a low point in their life, and many of them were there due to drug abuse or serious injury or COVID. One of my patients was a young man, the same age as me, who was being admitted to our inpatient rehab unit. In the short time I spent with him, he opened up to me about how the death of his mother the previous year was a driving cause for his distrust of doctors as well as his alcohol abuse. And the simple act of empathetic listening and reassurance that he was making the right decision let him know that no matter how dark things get, there's always someone ready to support you. I realized when a life hangs in the balance, it comes down to trusting in your training and trusting in the team around you. So I made it a priority to teach myself as much as I could from my experiences here, so I could be both a more valuable part of this team as well as to prepare for a lifetime of education. From asking questions to the nurses and exploring the mechanisms of drugs used, to learning to place my first IV, I was always eager to learn more. This was also around the time I was taking my physiology and pharmacology classes in college, so I was able to see concepts from the classroom applied in the clinic. It's really made the learning process feel so exciting, and it further stimulated my desire to take my education to the next level. I was first introduced to the anesthesia team when an anesthesiologist came to place an emergent intubation in one of our trauma patients with a complicated airway. However, in my time shadowing, I got to appreciate the calmer environment of the operating room and the control, planning, and preparation that went into each patient's care. After shadowing with the certified registered nurse anesthetist and the anesthesiologist, I knew that anesthesia was right for me because it incorporated everything that I've come to value over my journey, from reassuring patients and relieving their anxiety before the case, to being a critical part of the surgical team, to practicing a great mixture of procedures and pharmacology. Anesthesia brings it all together. Everything about the field excites me, and I'm ready to take on the challenge of becoming an anesthesiologist assistant. All right. So hopefully after reading that, you could kind of see what I was trying to do when I wrote this. And an important part of how this was in my application is that this was based off of the experience I got as a patient transporter in the emergency room. And at the time I wrote this, I had not become an anesthesia technician yet. So when I hear applicants asking me questions about how they can improve their application, I always insist that healthcare experience is essential for the application, in my opinion, to be competitive. And this is why. It's because this entire narrative, it really isn't possible without having some notable healthcare experience that you can speak about. And your experience doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to be for months and months and months. You know, these few stories, you could have observed all these events over the course of 2 months. But that being said, you do need to be exposed to some of these things. And it's just to make you think, really, and to know what you're getting into, because I would assume that the admissions committee, they want to see that you're taking it seriously, that you know what you're getting into, and that you've really thought this through carefully, and that you've taken some actions to help, develop yourself into someone who's more ready for this profession. And of course, this comes from the perspective of someone who is applying, with one gap year after college. Presumably, if you from a different background, you can maybe take some things from this and apply it to your personal experience, and that would be even a stronger application, in my opinion. So that's why I insist that getting healthcare experience is essential for your application, because it's not just you writing down your experience and listing, oh, I worked for 6 months at this job. No, it comes down to your interview and your personal statement. It's so, so, so important. And I honestly, if I didn't have this health care experience, I don't know what I'd write about, because the story would end, right around here. I volunteered at my hospital clinic, and I checked out the job and I saw, oh, it's a sweet job. But no, it can't end there. You need to go on and you need to explain. And then I did this to follow up with my interest. I went shadowing, I went working, I met patients, I met doctors, I talked to physicians, I talked to CRNAs, I talked to AAs, I interviewed them, I really thought it through. And I am ready to take on the challenge of becoming an anesthesiologist assistant. You need to know what you're getting into. Um, and I hope that, reading my personal statement helps you. I hope that you can, you know, take the good things from it and use that to inform your own story, because your situation will be different, your life experience will be different, but I just invite you to be very authentic and very open with it. The admissions process is very unnatural because you're forcing yourself to let everything hang out and let these people get to know you in a very short amount of time, people that are otherwise strangers. So just um, talk about the key moments that really make your perspective change, make your mindset form, and make you realize that you can hang with this and that this is for you. And good luck with your applications.